The 70s were like the Wild West, where anything and everything went, from riding in cars without seatbelts to children playing outside unsupervised. Many things that used to slide then have become intolerable and even illegal. Here at Days Gone By, we're looking at some things from the 70s that are now banned. Looking at TV shows from the 70s today, it's a wonder how they ever got on air. Standards have changed. People no longer tolerate anything that demeans others because of their color, race, or any other reason. Back then, offensive game shows still drew in audiences. One notorious example was the black and white minstrel show, which ran for a staggering 20 years, from 1958 to 1978. This show depicted white performers in blackface, singing traditional show tunes and American songs. The idea of blackface is deeply rooted in racist cartoons from the 19th century. Yet, interestingly, the show drew a massive viewership of 21 million, 4 times the views that popular programs like The X Factor get today. In 1969, the BBC briefly questioned the racism in the show and tried to replace it with another program called Music, Music, Music. But viewers rejected the new show and demanded the return of the minstrel show. Such blatant racism would be impossible today, as people are far more vocal and aware of their rights. Back in the 1970s, people didn't know much about the dangers of certain foods. Trans fat was the golden child of the food industry. It was cheap and kept food fresh for longer. But as scientists carried out more research on trans fats, they discovered a dark side to this golden ingredient. They found that these fats were linked to serious health issues, strokes, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, causing over 20,000 deaths in the US each year. Activists began to speak out against trans fats. One notable activist was Phil Sokoloff, a multimillionaire and heart disease campaigner. He targeted fast food giants like McDonald's for using trans fats in their fries, pushing them to use vegetable oils instead. Sokoloff even used his wealth to take out full-page ads warning the public about the dangers. Eventually, the fast food industry listened. By 1994, public pressure forced manufacturers to change food labels, so people knew what they were eating. Today, countries like Saudi Arabia and Denmark have banned trans fats altogether. From the 1940s through the 80s, toy makers in America competed to create the most realistic toy weapons. They sold nearly 20 million toy guns per year. Proponents of toy guns claim that they gave children confidence. Today, however, toy companies wouldn't dare advertise toy guns. In 1987, a mentally challenged man named Gary Stolman held a gun to KNBC TV reporter David Horowitz, demanding he read a statement about the CIA and aliens. It was later revealed to be a BB gun. Currently, while it's not illegal to sell traditional pellet or BB guns, the law does prohibit selling them to minors. In 2014, a 12-year-old boy named Tamir E. Rice from Cleveland was shot by a police officer who mistook his toy gun for a real firearm. Incidents like these have led to strict regulations on toy guns. Federal law now demands that toy guns have a bright orange plug in the barrel and be made of transparent materials or covered in bright colors. In the 70s, life was full of risks, and frankly, it's sometimes a wonder how children survived. Back then, children played on train tracks, and nobody thought much of it. Recently, in 2024, 2 adults and a child in Northern Virginia were hit and killed by a train. The trio was walking along the railroad bridge when the accident happened. In the 70s, people didn't grasp how dangerous it was to walk and play along train tracks, and it was normal until it wasn't. The US finally banned walking along the tracks in 2011. One must stay at least 25 feet from the track for safety, especially since trains are quiet today. You won't hear one approaching until it's upon you. Taking photos along the tracks is also illegal for similar reasons. Photography can distract you, and you may not hear a train approaching. Our safety standards have evolved, and people are more aware of the risks of getting too close to train tracks. It's mind-blowing to imagine that in the 70s, our safety standards were so relaxed that car seatbelts were optional. If you pulled such a stunt today and drove without a seatbelt, you would get arrested and charged hefty fines. The 70s were a different time, and as strange as it may sound, some cars came without seatbelts. Fathers were commonly driving around with their children on their laps. If this happened today, you would have to deal with child protection services and risk losing your child, your driver's license, and risk imprisonment. While it was risky, it was a way of fathers bonding with their children. As people became aware of the risks, the government tightened road safety regulations, ending the so-called bonding culture. Can you imagine if today your child came home and told you that a teacher had spanked or paddled them? This would cause an uproar. It's hard to imagine that corporal punishment was allowed in schools and homes in the 70s. The practice is today recognized as a form of child abuse that could land a teacher or parent in prison. Back in the 70s, kicking, spanking, and paddling were all acceptable forms of discipline. Children's rights activists raised valid concerns that the practice paved the way for abuse. Sometimes these forms of discipline went wrong when students got seriously injured. Many 70s kids faced corporal punishment and claimed it molded them into responsible adults. Psychologists have highlighted that these forms of discipline can cause potential harm. Although corporal punishment did not happen daily, it was used to force a child to reconsider their actions and behaviors. While the punishment may have been common back then, it had a negative impact. Nowadays, more humane ways exist to teach and guide children by emphasizing communication and understanding the underlying issues. In the 1970s, life was fun and, for the most part, carefree. Kids roamed free and could play outside all day. They rode their bikes or played hide and seek until the streetlights came on. The only universal rule was to finish their homework or chores before heading out. Unlike today, parents did not worry about their children's safety. If something happened, such as someone getting hurt, the kids would run and report it to the parents. Today, if you let your child roam outside unsupervised, you will definitely become a guest of the state. In 2014, a Florida mother let her son walk alone from home to a nearby park. She was charged with felony child neglect and faced a 5-year prison term. A South Carolina mother was arrested for allowing her 9-year-old daughter to play unsupervised in a park. Child Protection Services temporarily took her child away, and she also spent 17 days in jail. Today, childhood is not what it used to be. It lost most of its wonder and sense of adventure from running around unsupervised. Before we fully understood the health risks associated with cigarette smoking, no one thought much of it. In the 70s, smoking was widely accepted. Parents would smoke in front of young children, not realizing the effects of secondhand smoke. Because of this casual attitude towards smoking, children played with candy cigarettes, pretending to be adults. In 2019, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, banned these candy cigarettes because they encouraged more children to smoke. Back then, there were no rules around some things, and believe it or not, parents could actually send their kids to buy cigarettes. The parent would drive to the store with the child, drop them off at the store door, and circle around the parking lot, waiting for the child to buy and come out. By the time they circled once, the child was already out with the cigarettes. This fast method saved them the time that they would have spent parking and walking into the store. The store clerk knew the child was with the parents and would sell them the cigarettes. This was normal. No one thought it was a big deal. But in December 2019, President Donald Trump signed a law setting the legal smoking age at 21 in all states. Selling tobacco to a minor is now a serious crime that could result in a hefty fine. When we say the 70s were wild, they were indeed a lawless time. As a baby boomer or Gen X, you might remember some crazy things. A woman could be walking down a street, minding her own business, and a man might casually pinch her bum. Startled, she would look around and see a man walking away, amused and laughing heartily. Embarrassed, the woman could not do much, as the casual bum pinch was widely accepted by men. A male coworker might pinch your bum or even make lewd sexual innuendos, and nobody would bat an eyelid. Was this wild or what? Everyone dismissed this as casual flirting. Today, this is known as sexual harassment and carries severe penalties at both state and federal levels. Today, kids are well taken care of and protected with safety gear. But back in the 70s, playgrounds were full of danger. The star of the playgrounds was the metal slide, baked in the sun for hours, which could easily give children thigh burns. There was even the risk of tetanus from exposed and rusty nails and bolts. Beyond the equipment injuries, playgrounds were either made of packed soil or hard asphalt, unlike today's playgrounds, which are lined with soft rubber. The equipment often had sharp edges that could easily slice a child's skin. If a child fell from the monkey bars, it could lead to broken bones or scraped skin. For years, America has had a strange relationship with alcohol. Drinking moderately is still a favorite social activity for many people. But from 1920 to 1933, America underwent a nationwide alcohol prohibition, making it illegal to sell alcohol. After the prohibition was repealed in 1934, people did not drink much. The per capita alcohol consumption was under a gallon per person. However, this changed abruptly in the 70s and 80s when it jumped to 2.75 gallons per person. Binge drinking largely contributed to this upsurge. At the time, there was little awareness of the long-term risks of excessive alcohol consumption, such as strokes, liver cancer, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Pregnant women and heavy drinkers risked miscarriages, stillbirths, or birth defects in their babies. Compared to the 70s, we now know much more about the dangers of excessive alcohol. Health experts recommend only 14 drinks per week for men and 7 for women. Excessive alcohol consumption can lead to dangerous and reckless actions, like drunk driving, which can cause accidents or legal issues. If there was one thing the 70s kids had, it was resilience. How they survived some of the things they went through was a miracle. Some physical education or PE activities they engaged in are questionable and even dangerous by today's standards. One such activity was dodgeball, a mandatory sport, as it was part of your grade. The sport tested your agility and reflexes. It has since been banned from the PE curriculum because it's considered overly aggressive and dangerous. Another sport was wall ball, a combination of handball and a brick wall. It was as chaotic as it was fast-paced and could quickly leave you nursing scraped knees, elbows, and knuckles. These PE activities may look dangerous today, but they taught the 70s kids resilience and teamwork. Lawn darts, or jarts, were a popular garden game in the 70s and 80s. The darts were 30 centimeters or 12 inches long, with a weighted tip of metal or plastic on one end and 3 plastic fins or a rod on the opposite end. The game was played by throwing them underhand at a horizontal target on the ground, where the weighted end would hit and stick, like a spear or javelin. The target was a plastic ring, and you scored a point when the dart landed anywhere inside the ring. But due to thousands of injuries and 3 children's fatalities, the game was banned in the US and Canada in 1988. Asbestos was widely used in the 70s for its insulating and fire-resistant properties. By the late 70s, research discovered that asbestos caused severe health issues due to inhaling its particles. These diseases included mesothelioma, asbestosis, and lung cancer. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, banned all products containing asbestos in 1991. However, the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the total ban on its manufacture, import, processing, and distribution. Yet, the enforcement of strict regulations led to a steep decline in its use. Today, child labor is banned, but in the 70s, child labor was common. Few restrictions existed on children working in family businesses or agriculture, especially in low-income homes. Employment was seen as a rite of passage that instilled a strong work ethic in children. The Child Labor Agreement proposal of 1976 aimed to protect children from exploitation. The U.S. enacted strict regulations that prohibited employing children in dangerous conditions. Back then, consumers loved raw milk for its higher nutritional value and rich flavor compared to pasteurized milk. However, by the late 1970s and part of the 1980s, it became clear that raw milk posed health risks. Foodborne illnesses linked to raw milk, like E. coli, listeria, and salmonella, led to a safety reassessment. California was one of the first states in 1987 to enforce stringent regulations on the sale of unpasteurized milk. If you lived through and survived the 1970s, you're a hero. And as they say, not all heroes wear capes. Those years were full of risks and adventure, all rolled into one. The good thing is, we survived, and are here to share the tales of the good old days gone by. If you enjoyed this blast into the past, give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, and share it with your friends. Hit the notification bell to ensure you're among the first to know when we post new videos. See you in the next one.